Hey folks, Rian here with the Flow Research Collective. So very generously, our three great psychologists here have all agreed to get on board and share their wisdom around how to deal with all of the chaos and uncertainty and overwhelm that so many people are experiencing given COVID-19 and all of its surrounding consequences. So we have surveyed a big chunk of all of you. We've got a ton of questions. We've got a good idea about what you're struggling with and what you need help with. And this is going to be your chance to get those questions answered and get some great advice from three phenomenal experts in the field over the next 20 to 30 minutes. So I hope you enjoy it. And let's jump in with the first question, guys. So first one that we'll start off on, because I think this is just hugely top of mind for everyone, which is how much information should I consume? Should I be trying to keep tabs on absolutely everything all the time and being as informed as possible? Or should I be doing a minimal amount or nothing at all?
I'll take a swipe at that.
And do you want to introduce yourself, Sarah, first of all?
Sure. I'm Sarah Sarkis. I'm one of the coaches here at the Flow Research Collective. So I think it largely depends on that muscle of self-awareness. Like, there are certain people who really thrive with a ton of information and can have honed their ability to sort of stay away from like either sides of the fringe information. If you're that kind of person, maybe this is soothing for you. But if you are overwhelmed and you are anxious, like a lot of us, the best strategy is to be informed, but then move on, like do other things sort of unrelated to tracking this virus.
Yeah, just related to that, that's what I've noticed a lot, is that people are going way past the threshold of a necessary amount of informed into what is almost this combination of indulgence and panic and chaos of just reading more and more and more and more, even after they've got the information they need to take the actions they can actually take in the first place.
Right. So there are two things that I think about in terms of the amount of information to take in. I'm Rachel Barbanel-Fried. I'm another one of the coaches. And so we only have a certain amount of information that we can actually take in, like that our brains can actually use. And so if you spend a lot of time consuming the constant barrage of news, then you don't have space or energy or time to actually do the things that, bring you joy or make you productive or allow you to live your life. And the other thing that we know very clearly from other very big sort of traumatic events is that there is such a thing as vicarious trauma, that the repetition of watching the trauma happen again and again and again has an effect on all of us. So, even the people who are like, okay, if they watch a lot of it, if we watch it and we listen to it again and we read it again and we're constantly consuming all of the trauma that's happening to other people, we are pack animals by nature and we are affected by what we take in. And so what I've been telling, my friends and the people that I work with is you have to really, really limit it. And you have to what I've found to be effective for me is 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. And other than that, no radio. I'm not on social media. I'm not on I'm not on a newspaper. I'm really just trying to attend to the things that I need to attend to, because otherwise it's just way too overwhelming.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that's super helpful. I love that. And it just requires some discipline. And that's the next question, which is, what should at least the first 3 hours of the day look like? Ideally in as much detail as possible around phone usage, scheduling, etc.
Well, I'll
Brent,
jump in.
You jump in.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brent Hogarth. I'm one of the peak performance coaches here with the Flow Research Collective. And, first of all, I would never jump in and say this is what you should do. I want to honor and respect your autonomy and your decision making. You know best what works for you. With that said, evidence strongly supports the utilization of a priming activity So whether it's a mindfulness activity to prime yourself to be here now in the present moment, whether it's reorienting your focus towards what you have in control, what you're appreciative of, that would be one of the first steps that I would recommend when we wake up our morning, almost right when we put our feet on the ground. Wake up those neurological pathways, prime the brain so that you have a sense of control and intention moving through the chaos so we can bring order to it. So I'm going to just leave that first piece and let others kind of fill in the rest of the pieces here.
Yeah, I love this question. So the first thing I would say is if you're in the category where you can actually wake up and choose what you have to do, because there's lots of people where this is disrupting sort of core functions of their life, right? So I try to think about that, like, I'm actually already in a place of privilege. So I just sort of, my first thought is like just gratitude that I can think out like whether or not I want to do, mindfulness or I want to do this. So times like this, that kind of just muscle building that helps. It's a little hit of dopamine, and it's also a hit of humility. So, and then I like Brent, think the morning hours. I love when people consciously author them inside or outside of a pandemic. But in this case, I would just go with, choose what you need. If your mind is racing, do down regulation things. If you feel really lethargic and getting out of bed has been hard, try to do some up regulation work that will really respond to where you're at.
And my take on it is, do whatever works, right? So people say, what kind of exercise should I do? I don't actually care what kind of exercise you do, right? If you're gonna go for a walk, go for a walk. If you're gonna go do yoga, there's online yoga to do. If you have a meditation practice, do that. If journaling is something that has been like successful for you before, it doesn't matter what you do actually, as long as you're doing something that is helpful to you to regulate yourself. So, that means we so far in Boston we're on day 4 of this shelter in place kind of situation. And every morning has looked slightly different for me, but I'm doing all of the things that I know that work for me, right? So one morning I journal and then I do exercise. One morning I do breath work. And that, so it sort of depends on what I can do. But I go back to the things that work for me in the past. I'm not looking to do something like super new right now. I'm just trying to do the things that I know have worked.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great.
And with that said, Rian, if you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, go ahead, Brent. Yeah, please.
One of the things that we certainly try to focus on with flow research and flow training is having clear, specific goals. And so one thing I might suggest is a helpful hack to get more flow is perhaps exploring and experimenting with doing a nightly to-do list. We know if we have a somewhat structure leading us right in the morning, we have a reduced cognitive load. We're not wasting our willpower and self-control that we can use to managing our anxieties on what our step and protocol is. So having a nightly to-do list with kind of clear goals can really facilitate the ability to really start and win our morning. So that might be one other kind of hack that I would
That's a really good one. Like when people listen to this, like I highly encourage that. It's super practical and it makes a huge difference. So that's a great little trick.
Yeah, just to tie a bow on that then, basically, Brent, I think what you're saying is that the most important thing about the first 3 hours is that you're not deciding in the morning what you're going to do for the first 3 hours of the morning. So you map that out in as much detail as possible the night before. Ideally, what people often find helpful in Zero to Dangerous, at least, which is our training, is extreme detail so that every step has been thought of and they can just shut off that analysis mode of wondering and questioning and doubting, and they just act. Especially
emphasis
now.
On extreme detail.
Yeah.
It really makes it. This is really where the devil dwells in the details. So for sure, that's a great suggestion. We're going to have people all over across the country making lists.
Yeah.
Share them on Instagram.
Yeah, so just to be clear for people at home, then basically map out the next morning in as much detail as possible before you go to sleep. And again, I think in terms of extreme detail, what that actually would look like is literally step by step, have a coffee, stretch, do my gratitude, shower, meditate, start work, whatever it is, that level of detail, so that you just know and can just move. Yeah, so I think that's super helpful for people. Next one that relates again to this is how to avoid paralysis, because that is what is happening to a ton of folks, I think, is they're just in this state of hyperarousal and hypervigilance and stress, and almost feel this sense of persistent rushing where there's not enough time to actually commit to do one thing because there's so many things happening. So you just get stuck in this state of like frenetic inaction. So any advice for people who are finding they're so overwhelmed that they almost don't feel like they have the time to do either these practices or to shut their phone off and work for 3.5 hours uninterrupted or whatever it is? Any suggestions around how to avoid that kind of paralysis and actually still manage to execute when massively overwhelmed?
I mean, I would say, like, at that point, you have to actually just stop. Just like, and if that's not possible, then I would reach out to people and I would ask for help and support. But if you're that overloaded, and I can really empathize with that feeling, it's like sort of hands up, step away from everything, and maybe take, like, some chunk of time where you are not doing the things that you're telling yourself you have to do. Obviously there are cases where you do have to do it. So, we have to be nuanced here, but oftentimes paralysis is going to be just a total flooding of the central nervous system. And actually there's not that much to do when you slow the central nervous system down. By the way, the list will be critical for helping somebody. The list we all just raved about is going to be critical. That if you can sit down 15 minutes tonight and do that list, I bet you your paralysis in the morning, because you've relieved some of that cognitive load and the decision fatigue. So those are my thoughts.
And I think that, what we're talking about here is not the list of like all the stuff that needs to get done, right? We're not necessarily talking about like making a list, although that can also be very helpful. I mean, very helpful for some people. We're not talking about a list of actually going through and making what needs to get done. We're talking about actually, if you're that overwhelmed, making the list of how do you calm yourself, right?
Yeah, really good distinction.
Once your amygdala is set off into that fight or flight mode, which is what we're all in right now. We're all just really trying to survive. We have to calm it down in order to function. We are just animals at our core, right? And all of the revved up business, we know science, right? We know that there are ways to calm it down. We know that if you do some of these grounding activities, if you concentrate on your exhalation, it will create a response in your body that will calm you. And so then you can get to the other stuff, but you can't get to any of the other stuff if you don't actually take that time, whether it's half an hour or 3 hours, whatever it is that you need to do in order to get yourself in that space.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was writing to myself, even just as it kicked off, that the two things to get on point as fast as possible was firstly environment, and getting a decent working environment, which I'm going to ask you guys about in a second. And the second one was state, which is obviously state being massively influenced by environment as well. And so all of these practices, gratitude, breath work, etc., get your state regulated, and then your environment obviously impacts that. And so what about people working from home?
Rian, if I could, sorry, Brian, if I could add a little bit more here before you go to people working from home. So one of the things I like to think about in regards to getting overwhelmed is that's a process of really becoming fused with our thoughts and our internal experiences. And so one of the things I would just say, first of all, it's completely appropriate that people are feeling overwhelmed. And I think a big challenge that we get into and why we get fused with our internal experiences and overwhelmed is because we struggle with it. So I'll just say really clearly to everyone, turn off the struggle switch. It's appropriate to feel overwhelmed, anxious, concerned, overwhelmed. And as soon as we're able to accept the way that we're feeling, we have a lot more flexibility to move through those emotions, not get fused and stuck on them. So I just want to really emphasize, the appropriateness and to stay willing to experience those, but reorient ourselves to that to-do list or to what our values are, and allow that to still be there. It's okay to be anxious, and then just refocus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's super helpful, Brent. And then before going to the work from home stuff, it seems like, I think it is the case, not it seems like, that overwhelm is perceptual, essentially. It's a perceptual issue, basically, where we perceive that there's tons and tons of things going on, but oftentimes we're still sitting at the same desk. Nothing is actually literally different in our reality right there. It's more so this sense of all of these things that are going to go massively sideways, or that are going sideways, but that, if we weren't actually even aware of them happening, wouldn't be impacting us in any way. So it's very perceptually driven.
It is, but also we want to be clear that, like, right now, everything is changing for people. And, when times are really uncertain, we get all of our sort of historical neurobiological patterns get kicked up. And so people arrive to this time in history with their own story and their own narrative. And so it sort of is real. And I really like what you said, Brent. It's a great emphasis that, what you feel that's not pathologic. This is a really overwhelming period of time for a lot of us. And it's very uncertain. Even for those of us who may sort of think that, it will pass or whatever, that we'll ultimately, it's still overwhelming. It's a huge degree of change in a short amount of time to our day in and day out lives. So I think that, the more you can accept that, but not necessarily engage every single solitary thought, and all that down regulation work will help with that.
Okay.
Right. So I also just want to add a couple of thoughts. One is that, like Sarah was saying, we bring our history with us. And so one of the things I've been hearing from a lot of people is they have not felt this overwhelmed since 9/11. Right? So this is a really big moment where life feels like it is changing, and we don't know what it's going to be like in the next, hours or days or whatever. So that is real. That isn't a fake feeling, and it's not pathological, like Brent was saying. It is a real feeling. But there are a couple of things to remember about that. One is that just because you feel it doesn't mean that that's the only feeling that exists inside of you. We all have multiple feelings that are inside of us. So that's the part of, like, taking perspective, right? I can also have gratitude while I'm feeling overwhelmed. And the other piece is that we have these thoughts that get attached to our feelings, and even though feelings themselves are valid and sort of ethically neutral, they just exist, right? There aren't right or wrong. The thoughts that we pile on top of the feelings are often what get us in trouble, right? So then we're thinking, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or there's something wrong with me. And just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And so we're trying to figure out a way to kind of balance that piece where, like, you give yourself space to acknowledge that the feeling of being overwhelmed and feeling like, oh my God, the world is changing and I don't know what's coming next. That's valid, but it doesn't mean that all of the thoughts and all of the anxiety and all of the things that come attached to that are necessarily true.
Yeah, no, it's super, super helpful, I think, folks. So then with respect to working from home, because I think it all compounds and is compounding around these topics with the fact that so many people are at home, it's exacerbating the overwhelm, it's increasing the distractions, making it tougher for a lot of people who have children to follow a cognitive load to-do list, etc. So any advice for people working from home, and the more detailed and specific and practical and granular, I think the better as well in this case.
if you have the space and you can create actual like space for you to work, and then a lot of our children are going to be either they are on online learning like Rachel's are, and lots of children throughout the country, or mine likely will be after spring break. You try to also create them a space. And you know, I mean, this is like my dream to work from home. I wish it wasn't under these conditions, but so like I trained my whole life to work from home, but I think the key is like be kind to yourself. Like it, you know, make sure that the hard charging things you need to accomplish are flexible right now, because I think everybody receiving that work from you, all the people that you're obligated to with deadlines, will be understanding right now. And you know, do the best you can. And if you find some genius way to make it that children and adults can coexist with work and school happening simultaneously, please put it on Instagram. You will be a millionaire. So, you know, just try to find your way, trial and error. We're going to have some time here to try it out.
Anything specifically about boundaries there, guys, in terms of time and relational?
So I have a couple of thoughts. One are that I think in general, people feel safe with boundaries. That's definitely true of kids. Yesterday, we didn't make a schedule for my kids, and the day was really, really, really difficult. And today I went through and made a schedule, like breakfast, reading, you know, screen time, lunch, all of these things, and made it very, very clear. And today was a much better day. I think for people who are not used to working from home, getting up and getting dressed is really important.
Yeah.
Like you're going to the office, taking a shower, doing all the things that make you feel good and make you feel ready for the day, I think are really important. In terms of time, we know that we generally have like 45-minute blocks of attention span in general. So I try to chunk things in that amount of time. And I had something else, but
but yeah, just to quickly, before Brent jumps in, to add to that piece of literally getting dressed in the morning, that's a huge thing I think people go wrong on, where they think there's this benefit of working from home because they can just throw on their bathrobe and then sit down at the computer or whatever it is. Whereas I think you actually need to over-index on the very simple elements of preparation and grooming and putting on normal clothes you go to the office in, and doing a transition ritual, and then going to work, even if it's, you know, in your room or whatever it is, even if it's in a corner of the living room or whatever. It's just about like psychologically differentiating. And,
you should come clean where you're at working. Now is the perfect time for you to reveal how disciplined you are.
I'm in my bathroom, so but I've got it set up as an optimal office.
It's impressive. It shows a serious discipline, which is what it takes.
Just to get the space right, get it differentiated, get it bounded from, you know, children or whatever else it is. No matter what, even if it means working in your bathroom, it still is much better to be working in a bathroom with a desk you know, lifted into the bathroom, but it being a clear, dedicated space with a closed door than sitting at a kitchen table.
And the kitchen table might be okay, but like the idea that you know, we spent a lot of time this weekend organizing our house so that we can all have different areas. The areas are close together. Mm-hmm. Right? But each person has their own space and has their own working material and has their own, you know, now we're all online. So everybody needs their own plug and everybody needs their own set of headphones and and I feel very grateful that we have those things and we have the ability to get the things that we need. But even the thinking about what we needed to make that space. And I think likewise, it's important to step away from it, right? Mm-hmm. To like, when you're done, if you're going to have lunch, close the computer, go have lunch. When you're done for the day, close the computer, step away from it and leave it there so that you're not constantly running, you know, not here nor there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that's key.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in, Brent?
Just to add on that a little bit, yeah. Well, I love what Rachel brought up, and that's the concept of enclosed cognition, which is really fascinating. And I would say it's a build off that we are conditioned. Our homes are conditioned typically for eating, for socializing, and for sleep. And so I would suggest that if you're going to be working from home, you can recondition a certain room for your work, but I would not bring your work into your bedroom. If you're gonna be conditioning your bed for now working, it's gonna impact your ability to step into a sleep mode and recovery. And so I'd be very cautious of what rooms have triggers for individuals that take them out of being present, and how to recondition certain rooms to be specifically focused for work. And just to add a little bit quickly more onto that, I would add that in this time of chaos, it's helpful to allow ourselves to check in with ourselves and ensure that our behaviors are value directed. We can get really lost in goals and outcomes we need to achieve, as opposed to making those meaningful contributions towards our most important goals. And so I would just ensure people, as they're working from home and they don't have the conditioning of the office that maybe triggers them to realize they're working for a larger group or larger picture, maybe spend some time asking, what do we really want? What does your life stand for? What do you want your life to be about? And allow that to kind of trigger some internal motivations for you that might not be initially triggered in your home working environment.
Yeah, super helpful as well, Brent, I think.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, please, yeah.
I think that's such an important point, Brent, the idea of being kind to yourself. We are all overwhelmed. And what I have heard again and again and again is that people are finding themselves really tired, and to acknowledge that you might need more sleep, and you might need more care. You might need something different than what you need normally in order to really function at your best. And that's okay to acknowledge that, to check in with yourself, acknowledge it, and make sure it happens. So maybe you need to take a nap. Maybe you need to go to sleep a little bit earlier. You're not commuting. You can sleep a little bit later. I don't know what it is, but to recognize that, to be kind is going to get you, to be kind to yourself is going to get you a lot further with what you want to get done.
Exactly. Doubling down on the practices that expand our capacity, whether it's prioritizing sleep or meditating or exercising or eating well, versus throwing them all out the window because we think there's not time for them. It's the exact opposite, I think. Spending double the time and going, making it even more important. I mean, sleep, I can't even imagine, not to stress people out, but it would be, this situation for people who are underslept significantly is a worse situation, just objectively, I think. So I think just making sure you're getting minimum 7 hours of sleep a night as the holy grail, top priority above all else, is also crucial.
If you can. And if you can't, disregard what we just said and don't obsess on it.
Exactly. If you can't make do, have a nap.
Show that type of internal discipline. We've all been training with you and alongside you in this kind of discerning mental discipline that comes from self-awareness. Use it. Use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's huge, I think. So just to wrap the questions around how to survive this and keep going and maintain, and then I want to ask a few questions about how to actually use it to thrive and grow. But any other thoughts or advice people have about what else to do in terms of survival tips and tricks and tools throughout this period?
Try to use movement. We've talked about stillness, and it's really, really important. It's just as transformative. And I know a lot of us are in very restricted settings, right? But roll a yoga mat out, and there's dozens of online programs. And if you can't do an online program, there's free stuff on YouTube that's of tremendous quality. So there's really no physical limitation that should prevent us from more days than not moving our body. It really clears the cobwebs out. And it doesn't have to be long. It could be, 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll still get that little hit of feel good feelings from those neurochemicals. So that's certainly something I've been urging everybody that I collaborate with.
Okay, super helpful. Either you two got one, or it's all good. If not, we can jump straight in.
Yep. I would like Rachel go, and then I'll go next.
I have a bunch of things, but I'm just going to say one, which is that to go off of the movement piece, right? One other thing, like put on music and dance for 15 minutes, for 10 minutes. Like music, we know music has an effect on our brains and the way we feel, and it's okay to feel good. So it's okay to like put on music that soothes your soul or helps you feel, comforted, and you can put the music on and you can dance in your living room. And that can be a really easy sort of 10-minute, 15-minute pick-me-up that's going to help you feel more connected to your body and more centered.
Yeah, it's helpful. Sure.
Right on. I would just add very quickly, the journey we're in right now, it's from here to here. So let's stay here now in this present moment. That would be, my number one kind of hope for us all. Is it's so easy to get locked into thinking about what's going to happen in the future. And we know while that might give us some temporary satisfaction of having some order to the chaos, it takes us out of the ability to adapt and adjust effectively based on this moment. And so ultimately impairs our decision making. So as much as we can, let's come back to our body, let's come back to our felt sensation, our breath, whatever it is, and let's act from here, and knowing that we have all we need right now to handle the situation that's coming for us.
Super helpful, Brent. And do you want to mention anything about experiential avoidance on that topic before we jump on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trained as a acceptance commitment therapist. So we're really focused on developing what's called psychological flexibility, the ability to be here and now and keep our behaviors engaged in value goals. And so I was kind of hinting at some of this work earlier, and I have a very kind of messy diagram I just wrote right now that kind of explains the process. So let's imagine these two circles in the middle here. Both represent our internal experiences. So images, thoughts, challenges that are arising. And these squares represent our sense of self, our consciousness. What we tend to do when these challenging internal experiences rise, these are arrows pointing directed inward. We try to change, control, and get rid of this internal experiences. Clearly, that does not work. We can't outrun our own internal experiences. So what happens is our sense of self then becomes collapsed around these internal experiences, and we get fused and stuck on them. So that's what experiential avoidance is. It's this unwillingness to really be present to what's arising, and then allow just that primal emotion or thought to have to be tended with, and not all the secondary emotions that arise once we want to change them. Now it's not just anxiety, it's anxiety about our anxiety. Then it's maybe sadness that we're anxious. Now it's maybe shame or guilt that we're unable to be effectively present. So what I would recommend is, as we notice these internal experiences arising, as opposed to trying to change or control them, let's just redirect ourselves to our values, to our goals, to those around us, and allow that to be there, knowing that if you're moving in the direction of what's important to you, you can burden it. So really, I just want to encourage people to allow and accept what's arising right now, and just reorient to what's most important here and now. And ultimately, we find in research that's moving towards what we care most about. And that's not an outcome. That's something we can do here now in this moment, not next moment, not after we finish something. It's something we can practice here and now.
Yeah, that's great, Brent. That's super helpful. And related to that, then, any thoughts on how to use the uncertainty, added stress, the chaos, even the economic climate in certain respects, to drive growth and to even potentially drive access to flow or improved opportunity, or any way that we can thrive within and amidst it all, beyond just surviving it and managing?
Well, I think that's largely probably dependent on where you're coming into this time in history. So, again, be gentle with yourself if at the end of this pandemic you haven't sort of like changed the world through your platform or something. I think it's, like for some of us, it's going to be just kind of day in and day out, right? But I do think that there's, Brent touched on this earlier, and it sort of can't be underestimated, but it's not necessarily something we can get like deeply into in a 30-minute talk. But oftentimes these kinds of intersections, these kinds of existential intersections where we're really faced with kind of our everyday life is kind of stripped away from us, the things that give us a sense of self and purpose and focus and all joy, freedom. We come up against really big existential crossroads inside of us. And to a degree that you can handle, lean in and listen to it. There's probably information there for a lot of us on directions we want to take our life, whether it's on the focus of our career or being more involved with service, or all kinds of ways that this can really make us much more empowered and sort of beautiful people. But in the short run, you know, focus on today, like Brent said, like be here now.
Yeah.
And you know,
yeah, I think the clarity point you made is huge, that it is an amazing opportunity to get rapidly extremely clear on lots of things that we've been humming or hawing or wondering about or dilly-dallying on. There's something about the added pressure that just instantly creates clarity. So that's one, I think, instant, very practical way that everyone can thrive, is getting clearer on what you want and what you're good at and what your strengths are and how you want to spend your time, all of those things.
Yeah, it can be transformative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Brent, you want to jump in?
I would just say, for myself, I've really been indulging in Stephen's new book, Future is Faster Than You Think, and really recognizing the opportunities that are rising with the convergence of technology. And so, for instance, I think of this as an opportunity where we have the most attention online at this moment, possibly than we've had ever, most likely. And so if there's someone who's utilized or who works from an office and has been looking for opportunities to dive into more digital work, creating content, there's opportunities now that I think are ripe for the picking, and can really provide significant value to people who aren't able to get that support otherwise. And so I'd just say, if this is this is a time for people to really, if you want to learn more about what's happening in the world now and what's coming, and check out Stephen's new book. It's not only is it informative, it's been inspiring, and in the way of recognizing how our world's transforming and how we can, get that autonomy that gives us more flow, get that ability to connect with others in a way like never before. So I would just recommend that, checking out the book adversely, and then seeing how this could be a great opportunity to maybe build into the digital platform you've always been hoping for.
You want to jump ahead, Rich?
I do. I want to say, Sarah and I were talking about this at some point in the last couple of days, and I think you said you said the phrase, "This is what you've been training for," right? This is game day. Like, this is what, if you have been working on trying to work on you're getting yourself into flow, if you're trying to work on taking care of yourself, if you're trying to do all of these things, this is for right now. And so right now is the time to double down on all of that, because this, we talk about the flow triggers and we talk about the flow cycle, and like, we are all in struggle right now. So like, double down on all of your triggers, double down on the things that that are going to get you where you want to go. It's going to take us some time to get there. But just because we're in the struggle phase right now, globally, doesn't mean that we're not going to get to the next phase at some point. So we just have to all kind of like, pull up our bootstraps or strap ourselves down, or whatever metaphor you want to, really like get into the flow.
Yeah.
We need adult swaddles.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I'm bringing back the adult swaddle.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful, guys. Thank you a ton, all of you, for your wisdom and
you.
advice. Hugely appreciated. I know folks will find it helpful. And I just want to mention that when we asked everyone about their biggest challenges, distraction was the number one thing. So we've built a new training that's more accessible than many of our trainings. We were going to bring it into the market at a higher price point, but we're reducing it down significantly. So it's called Distraction Disruptor. It's available to anyone who wants it. It's a great time, obviously, for it. It's going to allow you to unplug more effectively. It goes into very practical things like even the exact iPhone settings you should use for flow, and it'll teach you how to guard against distraction, how to protect your attention, so you can implement everything we've been talking about today and just really focus in and hone in on the things you know you got to do. And people can jump on that at beatdistraction.com. We got a couple of bonuses there as well that we're throwing in, so you can capitalize on those, or there'll be a button on this page somewhere as well. But huge thank you to all you guys, and I appreciate it. Any final remarks before we let everyone jump?
Everybody take care of themselves and reach out.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thanks, guys. And yeah, best to everyone. We're all here at the Flow Research Collective to support you guys. So just send us your questions. We'll be putting out more helpful content. Let us know what will be helpful, and we'll get on it as well.
100%.
All the best.
Thanks.
Stay well, everyone. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, guys.
Same.